Hello, this is Alex from BSC Designer, and in this video we're going to talk about KPIs, key performance indicators, and the balance scorecard for a startup. And let's start with this diagram that basically summarizes the details that we're going to discuss. Here we have four typical steps of any startup strategy that is focused on attracting leads, attracting prospective clients, engaging with them, creating value for them, and finally retaining them. So these are the four key pillars of the startup process, and also we have the economic metrics, of course. So the discussion around KPIs will be around these indicators, and we'll talk about them in details. And that will be the first part of this talk. In the second part, we'll be discussing how to use the strategy scorecard framework, the balance scorecard, to improve startups' understanding of its strategy, and of course to get startup pitch to the next level. So two parts, and let's start with part one. So the KPIs for the startup will vary depending on the stage of the startup. So if you are on idea stage, you don't have any product, you don't have anything, so these KPIs most likely won't work for you. So the KPIs that we're going to talk about are for the company that already has some product and is starting up in this sense. And as I mentioned before, there are certain pillars of how the company will be achieving its success in the market, and these are about these four plus economic base. So let's discuss its KPIs, its metrics, one by one. But before doing this, before going into the detailed discussion, I would like to explain how these KPIs appear. So the best case is when these KPIs are the product of certain discussion, and you're not just copying them because I used them in my presentation. Yeah, you need to understand why you have these very KPIs, because in your case, the KPIs might be different. So how to come up with the right metrics with the right KPIs? Basically, we need to start asking certain questions. I call them formulating your pains. So again, this is my perception, and most of the entrepreneurs have similar perception, but in your case, it might be different. So in my case, the pains are the following. The first main pain is how good we are in attracting prospect clients. Because if no one sees our product, we cannot expect achieving some results. Okay, so we have those people looking at our product. What's next? Then imagine that you attracted some visitors to a website. What happens next? Then you need to give them something to establish your relationship, let's say, because today just putting some ads and just creating a website is not enough, of course. So you need to engage with these users in some way. You need to provide some engaging content, whatever, if we're talking about online business. And then when you have got this when you made this first impression, you need to close the deal. So basically, you need to have some value that you will create for your clients. Once you did it, so basically that's what you do with your product or with your service. Once you did it, you're want to build this relationship to make sure that they loan for some time, and now you have to think about retaining these clients. And of course, the base for all of this is your economic sustainability. So if your burn rate is too high, probably you won't be able to pass through these steps. So let's discuss the metrics, and in some cases, I will be giving you some references to our website. And we all were start up at certain age. So I will share a story of BSC Designer of our company as well, so that you have some example. So attraction KPIs. Yeah. So the pane is on the right. How good are we in attracting prospect clients? And well, it depends on your business, but I guess you will have some website, and the attraction KPIs are measuring about measuring this input that you have from search engines, that you have from social media, that you have from whatever means you use to promote your business. So again, if you're doing it online, then most likely 90% of your KPIs will be related to traffic, organic traffic, direct traffic, paid traffic, social traffic, these things. So I will not discuss the details right now, but I will give you two reference links. One is to the marketing KPIs and marketing scorecard article, and another is more related to measuring social media metrics. And well, I promised to give some examples of BSC Designer, and well, in BSC Designer we are focused on educating our clients, and we are getting our incoming traffic by focusing on creating some content. So we mostly focus on organic metrics. Okay. Yeah, and actually, what we also tracked is the time that average user needed to get from the first touch point to paid subscription. So it's a kind of a combination of attraction and engagement and retention, but we measure it in an attraction because it helped us to adjust our customer acquisition strategy. Because, for example, we know how long it takes for our client, because our product is about KPIs, is about creating strategies. So we know average time that it normally takes for a prospective client to get from the attraction stage to engagement stage, and we use this to adjust our attraction strategy a little bit. So, for example, social traffic is not working really well for us, but organic and direct traffic are much better in our case. Okay, so imagine that you have a website, and for in some way you manage to get visitors to that website. So what's next? The next step is make sure that these people are actually you have some interaction with them, some meaningful interaction. The question that you want to ask on this step is how good are you in engaging users? And the main metrics that I would look at are the following ones. Again, it depends on your stage. So if you are on early stage, if you are just testing waters, then probably you will need to look more at the feedback obtained, and your metric will be the number of meaningful conversations that you have with your prospect clients. Again, in our case, for example, we have products that exist for a longer time, so we have a better understanding of what it means to get a customer who is engaged. And in this case, we're focusing on very specific engagement metrics. In our case, for example, we are tracking the percent of clients who sign up, of course, with a free test account, but also we'll look at the specific functions that we believe are key functions to understand the product, to understand the benefits of the product. So to generalize this, for example, in our case, we want that new users have to play with their account a little bit, have to create a new scorecard. And in our case, we count this as a user who actually got some meaningful engagement. We're looking for increasing this number, this percent. So 3 key metrics to focus on are conversion rate from visitors to sign-ups to the free trial account. Once you have people inside, the next very important metric is to use to look at their percent of the clients who unlocked key functions. And for sure, for this metric, it's really important to understand what are the key functions of your product. Again, it's not what you think the key functions are; it's what your clients perceive the key functions. So, how to do this? Again, our story is that we analyzed the people who sign up with us. We analyzed their times that they stay with us. We analyzed their profile, and this helped us to understand what functions of our product are important to the paying users of their product. Because there are many functions that are important for, let's say, for people who are looking for a free tool, for people who are not where we don't really have this market feed. So we managed to understand well, and we continue to do this. Continue doing this. We managed to understand what functions are actually blocking a user from, let's say, understanding the product in depth, and the functions that are necessary for that user, and that's what we're tracking as well. So yeah, and again, if you're testing waters, and well, we're always testing waters, it makes sense to look at feedback that your customers give you, and if you don't have a feedback, it's really bad. And of course, look at some meaningful conversation that you have with your clients. Okay, reference link, the same marketing scorecard, and some additional metrics. I believe that you can track them, but they're actually less important. Okay, so we can look at our website metrics. We'll also do this. We'll look at bounce rate. We look at adjusted bounce rate to exclude cases where people just entered and spent 0 seconds on the web page and then left. So this is a kind of bounce rate that we're not interested in. Of course, we're tracking time on site. Of course, we're tracking social engagement metrics, mail list metrics, returning users rate, and net promoter score. Net promoter score is a good indicator of engagement. So if people give you some feedback, share with you their information, and actually a high net promoter score is a good indicator of engagement. But for my opinion, it's this metric is a kind of lagging in time. So by looking at net promoter score, we don't have a clear idea about how we can adjust our engagement strategy. By looking at the metrics that you see on your left, we can do this. So we'll look at how people are converting into trial accounts, and we're trying to adjust something. Now, I think it's enough about this second step. Let's move to the third step, value KPIs. So we got visitors to our website, and we got some meaningful engagement with them. Like, for example, they sign up with a trial account. What's next? Again, it depends on your model. Our model is paid subscription. So after a 30-day free trial, we have different subscription plans. And in our case, the value that we create it for those people who continue on paid subscription. So again, on this step, we have to ask this question: how much value do we create for our users? And we're dealing with metrics a lot, and I'm writing about metrics a lot. And sometimes people ask, what's the best metric for the value, or how to measure the value that we create? And we don't have to reinvent wheel in this case. The best and the most important metric of value is if people pay you. So if you have paid subscription, if you have revenue, that's how people vote for your product. That's how people tell you that they find your product valuable. So that's the most important metric of value, that you have actually created value. Of course, there are some nuances. Of course, there are some details. Yes, some people can pay you and then give you some negative feedback and whatever, but the sign that they have paid you is that you have created a certain minimal level of trust, minimal level of value, and that's a good starting point. Okay. In some cases, we don't have enough data to look at. We don't have enough sales. We don't have these things. So what can we do in this case? In this case, we have to look at proxies. Proxy, or in many cases, we call them leading metrics, something that is before, that goes before the paid subscription and these things. So what goes before a paid subscription? How can we quantify the value? So we can look at the time that users spend interacting with our product. If people spend 5 seconds, don't expect any conversions to paid subscriptions. If people spend 10 minutes, then even if you don't have a paid subscription, then you can monetize this time in some way. So you created some value for people. Of course, if it's not the case of complicated interface, it's hard to deal with. Okay, so what other useful proxies can we use? We can use referrals. Again, we have Net Promoter Score. If we cannot track the number of people who bought the product, then at least we can look at the number of people who subscribe to some newsletter. So it's a kind of testing water in this case, when you don't have a prototype yet and you creating a landing page and you're getting some leads to this landing page. So it's a kind of proxy of the value that you plan to create. Not sure if it's the best approach, but in many cases it's the only approach. Okay, what else? I think on this point it makes sense to mention the role of your team, because if you go to investors, they always talk about your team, how good it is. Actually, team is a leading factor for all these 5 steps, for 5 KPI tabs for a startup. So team is helping you to create the value. Team is helping you to attract prospect users. Team is helping you to engage, to retain these things. So my recommendation, probably on early stage, you will do all metrics, all team management in an intuitive way. But if your team grows, you have a reference link to a scorecard for talent management, that's where you find some metrics related to retention, to engagement, to motivation, morale, these things. So the starting point is on the left, and when you have enough starting information, you can go to some more specific metrics. So in our case, what what metrics we tracked to understand the value that we create. Of course, we tracked the paid subscription, and as a proxy for paid subscription, we also tracked what we call meaningful interaction. So if we got some very good qualified pre-sale question, or we got a live demo request, for us it was a very good proxy for value that we create. Because if people want to spend some time, discuss your product, give you some feedback, share ideas, even if they don't buy, at least you understand what value they're expecting, and at least you understand how you can adjust your product. Okay, retention KPIs. So we got our clients, we sold the product, and for example, we sold the monthly subscription, and then we're waiting. Yeah, we're waiting that people will continue paying for this product or for this service, and some of them, of course, will go. Churn rate. Yeah, so the percentage of customers who cancel their subscription in a period. Why do people cancel? For many reasons. Obviously, someone who bought this product left the company, and you have a cancellation. Someone who bought with a credit card, the credit card has expired, you have a cancellation. Many reasons for this. Yeah, so just try to track it. Try to understand what are the leading factors for keeping your users more with you. So we go to the previous steps when you created some value, and you start looking at the best customers you have, therefore the customers that stay with you for a longer time, and you start analyzing what functions they need, what make them stay with your business. Again, in our case, we found, of course, we did some analysis. We tried to understand the churn rate across different regions, different business domains, even across subscription types. For example, in our case, before we had monthly, quarterly, and yearly subscription, and we found that for some reason monthly and yearly subscription work the best. So the quarterly subscription is actually where we had less interest and where the churn rate was the highest for some reason. Probably it's just our exception. So we always trying to analyze our product, and we're looking at how people are using it. When we do some live demos, when we meet our customers, we can actually interact, and sometimes you just sit next to your client and silent, and you're just looking at how this person is using your product. And we found that certain blocks in our software stopped people from using it for a longer time. Yeah, so we divided these blocks into let's say first contact blocks that prevented people from getting started with the product, and more let's say other blocks that people faced with when they use the product for a longer time. And I shared some part of this story, how we discovered this, how we fixed this on our website. You can look for a complexity article. Just go to bscdesigner.com and look for search by complexity keyword, and you will find some stories that we share. Actually, one of them was about removing 2 tabs, because before we had business goals tab and KPIs tab, and it looks good in theory, but for some reasons people were confused, and well, I share this story in that complexity article. So the point here is to, okay, on measurement level, we measure this churn rate, we measure the cancellations, but on internal level, we have to understand why this happens and how can we work with this. To asking clients for feedback, we're trying to do this, but it's hard to get a feedback from a customer who canceled, so we are not really successful in this term. But when we are able to talk with a client, we're doing a live demo or something like this, we understand better our clients, and of course, listening to the client when someone asks a question, a customer support, it's actually really important. So retention KPIs. Finally, economic metrics. So when we're talking about all these 4 steps, we're talking about some internal mechanics. But to make these internal mechanics work, we need cash, of course. And if you're a startup, probably you got some investments and you don't have any profit yet, so you will be measuring your burn rate, so how fast you're burning your money. Basically, it's a negative cash flow. If you're profitable, you will be measuring positive cash flow. In our case, we're profitable, so we're measuring our economic metrics, and we're focusing on increasing the annual cash flow. And this is what we measure in terms of economic metrics. Okay, so you know the speed that you're earning or burning your money. What else? Of course, the main indicator to adjust your marketing efforts, the first step, so attraction KPIs. To adjust your attraction KPIs, to adjust your attraction strategy, you need to measure this ratio, the customer acquisition cost versus lifetime value. So when you know these 2 figures, you can decide how much you can spend on marketing, how costly can be a lead for you, how much you can pay for ads and these things. Yeah. So, and finally, we measure general things like revenue, costs, profits. So I think the cash flow and this ratio, CAC and LTV is what you can start with. Okay, that was about KPIs. Few words about automation software. My recommendation, if you are bootstrap, you're just beginning, probably you can do all this with a spreadsheet software, or better option, of course, would be to use a freeware tool, which is a BSC Designer Lite. Why it's better? Because you can do all the things you can do in spreadsheet software, but you can do them faster. So you don't spend time on making formulas, on doing normalization, on calculations, on using stoplights, on calculating progress, performance, these things. Weight, they taking into account different indicators, like when you, with an increase of value, the performance is increasing, or where with a decrease of value, the performance is increasing. So you don't have to think about all these things. You just do it in the software, and it's freeware. In reference, you can find 2 articles. One leads to some discussion about the benefits of using professional software versus using spreadsheet software, and another is linked to BSC Designer Lite. Okay, if you have some budget, then you can go to some professional tool, and of course I can only recommend BSC Designer, which is a great option because it's out of the box. So you just install it and you have some KPIs, you have some automatic strategy maps, and it's really great. And if you started in a freeware BSC Designer Lite, you can just open your Scorecard and BSC Designer Online or BSC Designer Pro, so you don't have any migration costs. Okay, now this is a screenshot of KPI template for this startup. KPIs that we were discussing is from BSC Designer Online, our product, and you can sign up with a free 30-day trial. You can view all this. You can use the scorecards, start with them. And let's now go to the second question of this talk. It's about using, it's about a balanced scorecard for a startup. So I believe that there is some confusion about balanced scorecard, because people, when someone say what is balanced scorecard, you always hear a wrong answer. So I suggest to start with a very short definition, what it is and what it is not. So a wrong answer is a kind when people start explaining that balanced scorecard, yeah, we did it, and it's about, you have some indicators and you put them in 4 perspectives and some magic happens. Yeah, it does work in this way. What it is a kind of framework that helps you to describe and execute your strategy. Yeah, and when you have a strategy described, it's actually easy to discuss it, to explain it to your colleagues and things. So strategy execution framework, what does it mean? Let's review the strategy map created for startup, and I think you will get it. And reference here, it goes to article that explains the balance scorecard in detail. Okay, so I want to share 2 reasons why it makes sense to use this strategy execution framework for a startup company. Reason number 1 is that you will be getting a really good understanding of what your strategy is. Yeah, so this framework actually helps to understand your strategy better. So how it helps you, in what way? One of the key parts of the strategy execution framework of the balance scorecard is that you will need to build your strategy map. And on your strategy map, you will need to understand how you will create the value for your customers. What do the customers expect from you? Yeah. You will need to understand how this will lead you to some financial outcomes. And of course, you will need to understand what is the gap between what you know today, what your team knows, and what you have to know to do all that, to execute all this excellent strategy. So basically, that's what the perspectives of the balanced scorecard are about. You have some financial outcomes on the top, and then you do a cause and effect connection with the goals for the customers. What do customers want? What value you create for them? Then you map the goals related to internal mechanics of your business. And finally, the learning and growth perspective is where you map the skills gap that you need to fill in. So that's a very short explanation of the theory. And that's how this balance scorecard for a startup might look like. So again, you have some perspectives here. For example, the financial perspective, and on the left, you have the question for that perspective. So for financial perspective, you have you need to understand how you're going to monetize the value created for your customers. Yeah, and you might see that there you have the goal, which is a generic goal, like achieving economic sustainability, and you have some metrics aligned with these goals. So the gray lines are login metrics. So we have burn rate, running cost, revenue, this ratio, and you have a green line, which is a leading metric. So in this case, leading metric comes from the value that you have created for the customers. Yeah, so in some way you created value, and this value is transformed into economic outcome. So for customers, what value do you create for your customers, or what do your customers want? Again, 2 questions. You think here about the product, you think here about the perception of your product. And again, you have some login indicators that we discussed before, like percent of clients who unlocked key functions of the product, the paid subscriptions, all these metrics. And again, you have some leading metrics that help you to get there. And these leading metrics are this one. They come from the goals in the internal perspective. Yeah? So again, this is a kind of template, so don't just copy it. You need to adjust it according to your needs. But I guess you will have some goals related to attracting, engaging, and getting feedback from a customer. You will have some goals related to creation of the value, what's in your case. You will have some goals related to retaining customers. And again, you have some gray lines, lag and metrics aligned with these goals. And finally, the learning and growth perspective, where you have some goals related to related to the gap that exists between what you already know, between the skills that you have and the skills that you need to achieve the goals that you have mapped in internal processes perspective. Yeah, so normally these goals are related to customer development. So you need to know something about your customer. You need to know more about their needs. It's about understanding the skills that your team need to develop. It's about IT infrastructure that you need to have, all this. So that's what you have, a strategy map. And you will find it on our website as well. I think I have a link later. So that was the first reason. By having this map, it's easy to explain your story to your team. It's easier to understand what your strategy is, because if you're founder of the startup, if you're CEO, it's easy for you to imagine how things should work, but it's hard to explain it to your team. And having all your strategy on one single page of paper, it helps. And moreover, you have the metrics aligned with these goals here. So you're not just measuring some random metrics, you're measuring the metrics that matter for your strategy execution. So that was the first reason. What is the second reason? The second reason is that the balanced scorecard framework is what people in business world know about, and that's what potential investors find familiar for them, and that's what many, I think it's about 60-70% of Fortune 100, Fortune 1000 companies use. So that's a tool that big names use, and when you create a strategy map, not necessarily in our software, of course, but you can do it in any tool designed for this. When you create this map, you send to investors a simple message, which is that you actually did your homework in terms of strategy, and that you have a plan of executing it. Of course, there might be different way to explain your strategy. Probably you can do it in a napkin or a small piece of paper, and it's okay for most investors. Probably you want to do it in a very long presentation. You can do it via slide decks, but this is another way, and you can give it a try as well. So the action plan. Formulate your pains, the questions that we started with. Then define the KPIs. I don't recommend for you to track many KPIs. Try to focus on like between 5 and 10 KPIs. You can grab some from this article. And finally, create a strategy map for your startup. Again, you can use an online version of BSC Designer, or you can just download a template for this strategy map in PDF and fill it in, print it, and fill it in with your team. And the main article that I was discussing in this presentation is this one that you can find on our website, bscdesigner.com, Startup KPIs. There you will find many links that we have discussed here. I think that's all for this talk. Thank you for learning with me. And should you have any questions, feel free to contact BSC Designer support team. Or if you want to ask questions directly to me, you can find me on LinkedIn. And I'll be happy to help you with your questions, with your ideas. Thank you and goodbye.